So, welcome everyone. This is the eighth webinar of Glific Tech. In these webinars, Glific is an open source platform, and it helps NGOs to have the two-way communication with their beneficiary using WhatsApp. So in Glific, we use the WhatsApp API, and the WhatsApp provider is Gupshup. So it's now it's more than an year we are building Glific, and we have released so many versions. Currently, we have 20 plus organizations using the system. So now we are expecting a lot of contribution from the community so that we can build it further and help more and more NGOs. So yeah, and in the same thought, we realized that if we can discuss all the technical points which we are implementing in Glific, it will help the community members to start working on Glific with a pace. So on that thought, we are organizing these webinars, and you can check out all the previous webinar on our website. And this is the eighth topic where we will talk about the multi-tenant architecture, how we implement it in our Phoenix and Elixir applications. All right. So today's webinar will be more of a code. I'll show you how we structure and in Phoenix and Elixir. So a bit of Phoenix and Elixir information is required on that front. But before that, let's talk about some generic stuff so that we can set the context. So first is what is multi-tenant system, and so multi-tenant system is an approach so that which you can apply in system to serve multiple customers using the same source. I mean, the physical interface of a code can be similar, and all the customers can be rely in a and with the multiple customers you can serve. Sorry, let me rephrase. Multi-tenant system is a system where you can serve multiple customers by using a single physical instance. You can have multiple instance also, but it really depends on your user base. If it's too large, then you can. But yeah, the main thing of the multi-tenant is that only. And so there are multiple approaches of multi-tenant system. One is one tenant and one database. So when we are planning to apply the multi-tenant structure in Glific, there were a lot of discussion, and we research on each and every point what would be the better way for us to do that. And in our research, we came across these 3 points. It's the first one is one tenant and one database. So let's say if you have more than one customer, then you can have multiple databases which is connected to a single source code, and each tenant have its own database, right? So if there are 3 organizations, there will be 3 database in a single cluster. Second approach would be the one database schema per customer, and if this is in the Postgres, MySQL does not support that. So in Postgres, you can have multiple schemas. So now you can have a single database. It will not be a cluster, but you can create multiple schema, Postgres schema with each and every customer. The third one is one database and one schema, which we used in our system. And it's like that you need to put the customer ID in each and every table to differentiate the data between organizations. So we researched and we thought that in our use case, since our user base is not that big, and the Postgres gives all the row level security to you. So the third option will be easy to start with and easy to maintain it also. So we went with a third approach. So now in Glific ecosystem, we have the organization ID in each and every table. And I'll show you how we make it consistent and how we are picking up that organization ID for making any query. So in Glific, we are using the third approach. All right. So now we went to the Glific architecture where we apply. So we have covered this high level architecture in our previous webinar, where we talk about each and every component. But for now, just to give you a brief, there is a backend, there's a front end, and backend is connected to multiple APIs throughout the system. And now it's connected to a single database where multiple NGOs are hosted. So if you drill down a bit more in this system, what we do, we so Glific, so how, and there are a lot of ways to get the organize. So let's say if multiple organization people is using the same source code, you need a way to get the organization ID, right? And to do that, there are multiple ways. What Glific uses is Glific follow a scheme, a URL scheme, where you put a standard organization name in the URL, and whenever you make any request to the Glific backend system, it picks the organization ID from there. It replaces certain variable from that URL. It's a simple string matching, and get that organization name, and then put that organization ID in the cache for that request cycle. I'll show you how to do that. So if any system making any call on the Glific backend, first we check the request variable, request URL, and get the organization ID and put that in the same process, in the same request cycle. And then we pass on that organization ID to the Glific context and main core library, where using those organization ID, we can fetch the data. So that's a high level thing we are we are doing in Glific ecosystem. Now I'll just move to the code and show you how we are doing all these things. Any questions so far?
No.
All right. All right. So let me share my screen again with the code. Now I am in my code editor, and now I'll show you how we are using it. So in Phoenix, as I said, there is a term called plug. Plug are the middle, you can say middleware. So whenever a request comes through, it filters through multiple plugs. And if you saw that in the router file, we have our endpoints. And so in Phoenix, you can set up the default plug in the endpoint.ex file. So if I go to endpoint.ex, here these are the plugs. So whenever a request comes, it passes through all these plugs. And here we added this subdomain plug. So if I go here in subdomain plug, what we are doing here is we are getting the subdomain because we know that a URL will be in a specific form. So we can easily identify the subdomain, and we can just do some pattern matching and replacing variable and get the organization ID. Now there is another function called put organization. Once we get the subdomain, which is a slug of that organization, and we can easily, if I go here, you can see that we can easily fetch the organization ID from the database and put that organization ID in the process. So this is the way in Phoenix you can put the you can update the process thread with any variables. So until that process die, that variable will always be there. So right. So what we are doing here now is whenever you are making a request from the front end, we are just taking that URL and replacing all the other part of that URL and getting the subdomain of that organization ID. And then we are picking the organization ID and put that in the process. Now, once this organization has been added in the process, you can get that organization ID anywhere in the Phoenix system by using the same process. So it uses the same process ID to get you the organization ID. Right. So that's the one thing, how we are getting the organization ID in the Phoenix architecture. Now, let's say if you don't making a request, you are running a cron job or something like that, then we have to run all those cron jobs and everything for all the organizations, because we cannot get the organization ID because we don't have any URL or incoming request. So if I give you the show you our cron job identifier, it runs for all the organizations. We just run, we fetch all the organization in the system, and whoever enable for that particular service, we just run the minute worker for them. So that's how we are handling the cron jobs. Next part is the row level security. So because data in a single database, and you cannot, you have to be so sensitive about that, so that other organization cannot see the other organization's data, right? And for that, what we are using is a row level security called Ecto. So so there is a package in Glific called Ecto, which gives you the database consistency, the database layer. If you are coming from the Laravel, you can think about the Eloquent in the same way, but it's a bit different. It's a functional because LJ is a functional programming, so it's not exactly Eloquent, but it's again a layer on the database which give you some functions so that you can easily access the data from your database. And in the same manner, this Ecto package gives you one function called prepare query. So whenever we run whenever we try to access the database from using the Ecto package, it will run this function first. And what we did is we added the organization ID in this prepare query function. So now it requires the organization ID in each and every query. So if you don't pass the query, there are some ways to bypass this function. But if you don't pass the query, the organization ID in your query, let's say to update, delete, or create anything, then then it won't make a query and it give you this error. So that's how we are securing the system to fetch the data, to react the data. So we avoid all the custom queries and everything as much as we can. So that's how we are. So that's on the query part. I showed you the routing part first, the cron job, how we are handling the cron job, and how we are handling the database query. So these three terms are in the system where we are where there are chances to for the multi-tenant skip, and how we are avoiding that. The last part is that because in the database we don't have only the organization specific table. There are some tables which are used by all the organizations. We call them global tables, and those are in a different schema altogether, global. And that's why you can see that we are just bypassing. In case the table is in the global schema, then just skip the organization ID. So that's another thing we are doing in the Glific. So that's how the structure so far. If you think we are skipping something, or we can be bit more tighter here, or we can add more security in this process, just let us know. So I think that's it on the webinar. Let me know if you have any questions for me.
Pankaj, I do have two questions.
Yeah.
So the first question is it possible that one user is a part of now multiple organization? And if yes, how the system is handling that in terms of multi-tenancy?
Sorry, you are saying that if a user can have multiple organizations?
First question was, is it possible that one user is a part of multiple organizations?
I mean, yeah, but it is possible to one contact or one user can have multiple organizations. But what we are doing that is we are using the URL scheme to get the organization, right? So if you are from Saja and SOL, let's say Satyendra is added in a Saja and SOL. So you have to go to that specific URL to log in into your system. So that's how we are handling. So once we get the organization ID, we authenticate you based on that organization ID. And one more thing, all the unique keys in our tables are based on the composite key. I mean, the user ID is not, sorry, the user phone number is not a unique field in the Glific system. User phone and organization ID is a unique key in the Glific user table. Does that make sense?
All right, I think I got that answer.
Yeah.
Okay. There was one last question. So, Pankaj, how do you see Elixir handling multi-tenancy as compared to other OOPS-based programming languages? I mean, is there any advantages or disadvantages do you see?
Yeah, I mean, So multi-tenant is pretty standard now, and each and every language can support that. What in Elixir I really liked is the functional way of doing that. So you just need, in case you need you need to make a query, you need to have the organization ID, and that organization ID is coming from one function to another function to another. So only seeing that much clarity while writing the code and how the data is passing on from one function to another function, that is really easy for me. Like in other languages, that is pretty abstract, and for me, that's my perspective. But in Elixir it's pretty easy to see. So you can modify any function at any time, but you know that what should be the response and what should be the request parameter. So on that front, Elixir is handling the multi-tenancy pretty well. I mean, it's really secure as per my perspective. While if I talk about Laravel, because I also know the Laravel background, so if you put the organization in the service provider and everywhere, so you can access the organization ID via app variable in anywhere in the system. Since it's a scripting language, so global organization ID, and those are the chances where you are not sure that you are getting the right organization ID or you are might missing something. But in Elixir, I don't face this challenge because you have to write each and every function by your own and passing that data. So every function is a unit and complete in that sense.
Right, I think I got my answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other question?
Yeah, Pankaj, I had one question. So basically, Glific is a multi-tenant system, and so regarding that, every organization use the same resource. So how much effect does it have that if an organization with relatively large customer base use the same system and organization with relatively less customer base use it at the same time? So does it have some latency based on the usage?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, when the database will have a lot of data, and when a single table will have a lot of data of multiple organizations, then there will be some speed gap, right? There will be some latency in the data. But that's where the Elixir comes play a role, because Elixir is too fast and all the thread are the lifetime of the threads are too low. It is pretty much faster, and so that's where we are handling. I mean, there is some latency, but because of Elixir and the speed of the Elixir and Ecto thing, we don't face that challenge anymore. I mean, so far we didn't face any challenge so far. But of course, if you go with the multi-tenancy in a single table, that might be a drawback for you, which you need to handle by indexing and other kind of stuff. Yeah. Anything else?
No.
All right. So yeah, I think that's it. We will see you in next webinar on next Thursday. Then bye.
Thank you.